No.
I'm gonna bop you one. I'm going to slap you
no,
No, he's getting disgusting. You could have at least played one of my songs, for Christ's sake.
A face like a blade, a body like sculpture, a stare that dared you to look away. Grace Jones didn't enter the fashion world, she invaded it. And from the moment she appeared, it was clear she wasn't here to be soft, to be pretty, or to be palatable. She wasn't here to be human. But why would a woman choose to look alien? Why armor herself in masculinity when the world demanded femininity? And what kind of childhood forces someone to become a myth just to survive reality? Long before she ruled the runways of Paris or shattered expectations on MTV, Grace Jones was a child silenced by religion, punished for standing out, and told her power was a sin. So she did the only thing she could. She made her difference impossible to ignore. This is not just the story of a supermodel. It's the story of a woman who refused to shrink, so she became a legend. Before she became an icon in sculpted suits and sharp shadows, Grace Jones was a small girl in Spanish town Jamaica, hiding from a man named Mas P. He was her step-grandfather, a strict Pentecostal preacher who believed discipline was God's will and pain was a form of salvation. Grace was taught to kneel on bottle caps, to stay silent, to erase herself. She would later say that the violence of her childhood taught her how to control fear, not to feel it, but to use it, to become it. When her family moved to Syracuse, New York, she entered a world that didn't understand her sharp cheekbones, her accent, or her unwillingness to conform. American suburbia wanted softness. She gave them silence instead. But beneath that silence, something was building. How does a child punished for being different grow up to be unforgettable? How does someone escape not just a place, but a system designed to make her small? Grace found her way out not through rebellion, but transformation. She became a theater student, a performer, then a model. And when New York didn't know what to do with her, she packed her bags for Paris, a city where different was not a weakness, it was currency. Paris did not ask Grace Jones to be softer. It asked her to be more. Within weeks of arriving, she found herself surrounded by the most daring designers in fashion. Yves Saint Laurent, Kenzo, Ezzedine Alaya. These were men who didn't fear difference. They designed for it. They celebrated it. And Grace, with her angular features and unpredictable energy, became their perfect muse. She walked runways with a stride that looked more like a challenge than a performance. She shaved her eyebrows. She sculpted her body like a weapon. She posed for Helmut Newton and Guy Borden with a glare that said, "I am not here to be consumed. I am here to command." In Paris, she wasn't too dark. She wasn't too strong. She wasn't too anything. She was exactly what they needed, but had never seen before. She lived in an apartment with Jerry Hall and Jessica Lange, dancing through nights at Club Lessept and turning every room she entered into a stage. Modeling was no longer the goal. It was a launch pad. Music was calling, performance was calling, a visual revolution was brewing. And at the center of it all stood a woman the world couldn't define. Who gets to decide what beauty looks like? What happens when a woman builds her image before anyone else can define it for her? Grace wasn't following fashion. She was rewriting it. Jean-Paul Goude saw something in Grace Jones that no one else dared to touch. To him, she was not a model. She was a canvas, a concept, a challenge. Together, they crafted images that bent reality. Grace riding a panther, Grace breaking out of a glass box. Grace with limbs elongated like a surreal sculpture. He once said she was not of this world, and in many ways, he helped make that true. He directed her photo shoots like choreography. He designed her album covers like propaganda. He turned her into a visual myth. But myths are not built without sacrifice. Behind the lens, their relationship blurred art and obsession. She was his partner, his muse, the mother of his child, but she was also the subject of his most controversial fantasies. Once that critics said fetishized Black bodies and reeked of colonial imagery. And as Grace's image grew more extreme, more iconic, more unforgettable, so did the question that haunted it all. Who was in control? In America, the backlash was more subtle but just as cutting. The industry didn't know where to place her. Radio stations found her sound too weird. TV shows found her presence too aggressive. Brands found her face too sharp, too Black, too bold. While Madonna was rising with polished pop rebellion, Grace stood outside the system, untamed, unapologetic, and slowly shut out. Was she erased for being too much? Or was the world simply not ready for a woman who refused to be anything less than herself? She hadn't fallen in the traditional sense, but the industry had quietly stepped back. If the industry couldn't define her, then she would define herself. Grace Jones turned Rejection into a manifesto. She doubled down on everything people said made her too much. In 1981, she released Nightclubbing, an album that fused reggae, funk, and art pop into a sound no one had heard before. The cover said it all. Her face painted in steel tones, shoulders squared like architecture, gaze fixed like a statue that watches you back. She didn't just perform music, she staged war. Her concerts were part theater, part fashion show, part rebellion. She entered the stage cracking a whip. She disappeared into shadow and re-emerged under strobe lights like a god reborn. She was no longer a model or a singer. She was a force. In film, she defied the roles Black women were boxed into. As May Day in A View to a Kill, she wasn't a damsel. She was a villain, a warrior, a storm. And in Conan the Destroyer, she stood beside Arnold Schwarzenegger as his equal, not his accessory. There was no soft regrand, no apology tour, no attempt to smooth her edges. Grace Jones didn't ask for a second chance. She took the stage, claimed the camera, and made the myth hers. How many women are told to tone it down in order to survive? How many actually get louder and thrive? The industry never fully embraced her, but the world did. Fans across generations saw in her not a threat, but a mirror that reflected the power of refusing to shrink. Grace Jones did not fade. She multiplied. Long after the flashbulbs dimmed on the runways of Paris and the charts and moved on from New Wave, her image remained. Sharp, electric, uncompromising. She had become more than a model or a musician. She had become a symbol. Artists began borrowing her boldness. Madonna cited her as a blueprint. Lady Gaga echoed her theatricality. Janelle Monáe built an entire universe out of the androgyny and defiance Grace had pioneered decades earlier. Yet no one ever fully captured her essence, because Grace was never just a look or a sound. She was a refusal. She refused to apologize for her skin. She refused to apologize for her strength. She refused to apologize for existing outside the boundaries the world tried to trap her in. And in doing so, she opened the door for others to escape those same cages. Even now, She performs with more energy than artists half her age. At the Queen's Diamond Jubilee, she hula hooped on stage in a corset, not missing a beat. At Afro-punk festivals, she arrives in body paint and feathers, towering like a living sculpture. She has never asked for permission. She has never asked to be understood. And still, she stands as one of the most respected, imitated, and misunderstood figures in fashion history. What happens when a woman is too powerful to disappear? What if legacy is not about being accepted, but about being impossible to erase? Grace Jones did not just break the mold. She set it on fire.